All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Justin Leslie here,
Thanks
ready
having
for
me
a
on.
podcast, previous Pfizer scientist, looking to help the world with their special diseases to be able to make an impact in the world. Went into Pfizer, had an incredible story, which I won't ruin today. That's why we're here to learn about it and to expose some truths.
Yes.
And now you're on the track to be a chiropractor.
Yes, absolutely.
Always
So,
been
Matt,
elevated.
yeah, it's crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, man.
So thanks for having me on, Dalton.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, brother.
For sure, dude. For sure. So earlier we were talking a little bit, and I thought it was fascinating that you said you had come down with a condition, and then this was like your transition into wanting to go into pharmaceuticals because you wanted to help people with this condition. So I'd love to hear, what was the process of finding out that you have, like, was your childhood like?
It was definitely an interesting experience. So a lot of people probably haven't heard of tuberous sclerosis complex, but that's the disease that I was diagnosed with. It's a disease with a really long name, and I think of diseases now kind of as just like a real construct for symptoms. And so I was diagnosed at the age of 10. I had a tumor actually removed from my left big toe, which is a symptom. It was a benign tumor. Basically, I couldn't really fall asleep at night when, all throughout my childhood. I could fall asleep, but every once in a while it would pop up and it would be this burning pain in my left big toe where I couldn't sleep for hours.
Yeah,
And, my mom just thought it was a bunion. We went to an orthopedist, and he's like, "Oh, you got a benign tumor," which was a crazy thing for a 9-year-old to be going through, because I didn't know other 9-year-olds that were having this.
Did you know what a
experience.
tumor was when you were 9? I mean, you were just like, "What the? I
No.
guess my fucking toe hurts."
I had to tell you the truth, no, I had no idea. That's when I started to learn what benign versus malignant was.
Right.
So thankfully it's benign, right? And then I got cut open my summer year of travel baseball when I was 10 years old, or like I was on the 10-year-old travel team. I was still 9 technically, but then that following winter, I think I went to a dermatologist, and that's where my whole life changed. Basically, I was growing up, I have a rash on my back called a shagreen patch, which are these raised bumps that kind of look abnormal. I had some moles on my back, which is why my mom said we were going, but I also felt like we were gonna kind of discover stuff. And even
How
if
old were you then?
I was 10. So even if you look at my face, I have some slightly raised bumps on my face called angiofibromas, and so that's all the med terminology stuff that we learn about. But those are the primary symptoms, and then I even get some fibromas on my fingers, which cause them to crack. And so I'm relatively a lucky guy when it comes to what TSC is, because comes to when you look at the statistics with it, 90-something% of people have epilepsy, where they're having grand mal seizures, and they need to really be on seizure medications allegedly for the rest of their life. And 40 to 60% of people have autism, and a lot of them need a daily assistance person essentially just to get through life. And so growing up through childhood, I was in a somewhat depressed mindset, like, why me? Well, I was also going to get MRIs actually every 6 months when I was a teenager in Connecticut. And one thing led to another, where I was trying to figure out what I wanted my college major to be. And I applied to go to the University of Rhode Island for a business major, actually. But under the notes section, I said I had interest in pharmaceutical sales. I got a phone call from their registrar's office, essentially. And they're like, "Oh, you should apply to be in the pharmaceutical program." And I said, "Sure. You think I'll get in?" And they said, "You look like you could get in." I got like a 30 on my ACT. A pretty good score, I guess. And then I got in, and that's where that pharmaceutical journey started.
Nice, dude.
So 4-year undergrad, and then one thing leads to another.
Yeah, man. So let's take it back to the time when you're figuring out you're 9 or 10 years old. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Two. I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
Okay, so you're the oldest.
Yeah, my brother Brendan is just a little less than 2 years younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister Julia is, I believe she's 23, 24.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you're the oldest.
Yep.
You're figuring out, hey man, something doesn't. First of all, you know something doesn't feel right, and second of all, what was your mom and dad's reaction like?
My mom felt like everything was going to be okay. My dad was a little, I don't. We basically went to Pennsylvania the day of my diagnosis as like a vacation. This dermatology appointment was just like a little pit stop, and then we were going on vacation. I was extremely upset. My mom was comforting me. They both comforted me. It's more just a big unknown. The day of, I was with my mom, and they printed out a 26-page packet of like all that I had to go through. Like life expectancy is 50 years old, and just basically premeditating that like my life is going to be horrible in a way.
And did you have conversations with your mom about it? Like, or were you overhearing conversations with her and the doctor? Or what was that like for you?
I overheard stuff. I mean, they sent me to a specialist as soon as I could go.
Mm.
As soon as we got back from Pennsylvania, those were all put into order. I was set up with a head neurologist, Dr. Francis DeMario in Connecticut. Thankfully I'm from Connecticut, so it wasn't hard to go to visit him, where there are people who like fly from all over the country or drive 4-something hours to go see this guy.
Yeah.
So, grateful for him to be able to see me and just, monitor the condition. Because, I mean, like I said, I was getting MRIs twice a year up until I was like 18, or was it 21?
Really?
One of those ages where they basically found a small little tumor on my brain, little fibroma, I think in my frontal cortex, but nothing that's like impacted function at all.
Yeah.
And I think there's like one small little speck as well on my kidneys. Because the diagnosis, it affects benign tumors in all organs of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where these benign growths come from. There's basically an issue with collagen, essentially, is the idea of what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so it creates extra tissue.
But
it can go malignant, but it's extremely rare.
Yeah.
Rare for that to happen. I think you have to essentially be extremely unhealthy for that to really play out.
And your brothers and sisters, everything, there's nothing?
They're fine.
Yeah.
They're both very healthy.
Yeah.
They're both active, and they just, my sister has a very interesting testimony about like depression and stuff as well, but that wasn't like a genetic diagnosis or anything. It was more just her diagnosis of like depression, anxiety, and everything, and then getting off of meds after like 6 years of being on a cocktail of meds. Really opened my eyes up to really the pharmaceutical world and how they actually don't know much about anything when it comes to prescribing those types of medications, and they're kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks and alleviates symptoms, when reality is, you can do a lot of lifestyle modifications to really address what's going on there.
Yeah. So do you feel like, at what point did you decide you're like, all right, I'm going to take health into my own hands? Like, have you always been, you said you played baseball, you were active, and you continued to stay active?
Yeah.
Did it affect you in any other way?
High school and college, I was always active. Was always lifting weights at the very bare minimum. It's kind of like a mental health thing for me to just escape.
I get it.
Get in some, lifting the iron and get some pumps in. But yeah, I've just always had a passion for being athletic, but it really hasn't impacted me to the level that it's impacted other people, actually.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think God wanted me to, he gifted me the ability to not have seizures and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, be of sound mind and not get hooked on pharmaceuticals for the rest of my life, which I'm extremely grateful for.
Yeah.
And you know, some form of resilience from, you know, the
Your heart.
internal terrain, the heart. You know, I mean, I just, you know, I mean, I didn't really control how my body reacts to certain things, but my theory actually is that this is probably some form of a poisoning or detox. You know, the symptoms are a detoxification probably from some form of a vaccine injury.
Mm.
Is my theory, or something
Yeah,
along
yeah,
those
yeah,
lines.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
based off all the fun
The
research
next,
that
yeah,
I've done
yeah,
throughout, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah, okay, so let's
everything.
fast forward a little bit. You understand now you're in, did you know what you wanted to be when you were young?
I was I would have said, you know, when I was 5, I would have said, you know, Major League Baseball player.
Yeah.
And then growing up through middle school and high school, it was really like I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is where the pharmaceutical sales thing kind of came into play because of this diagnosis. I was like using it as a way to, you know, provide inspiration as to like what I would want to do in my career. So I was thinking either pharmaceutical sales or pharmaceutical research, which is how I ended up at the University of Rhode Island.
Mhm.
When I got on campus, I didn't know if I was going to do sales or research. It kind of was just like, I'm going to see how it all plays out in school. And similar to chiropractic school, like it's a lot of heavy basic sciences in the beginning. You know, I took, I'm pretty sure I took biochemistry, but I definitely took, you know, standard biology, chemistry, orgo 1 and 2, like all those classes, which, you know, is heavy
It's a heavy
stuff.
load, yeah.
Heavy stuff. So I took those and then ended up in the College of Pharmacy my junior year, where I started to pick up more of undergraduate research as well as, I mean, I took a pharmacoeconomics course my senior year, and I did gain some business experience during my junior year internship where I worked for Rhodes Pharmaceuticals, which is funny. They are a sister company or daughter company of the Sacklers Purdue. So I saw what the opioid industry actually was like before I even graduated, and I said, I don't want to work for I don't want to work for Rhodes. I don't want to work for Purdue. Like I was actually sitting in on a meeting one time during my internship where, I mean, I was mostly in a smaller scale manufacturing where we were just creating a formulation for an anti-protozoal, I believe.
What does that mean?
A drug that it was just a rare drug for like an anti-fungus, anti-protozoal.
Oh, I see.
They were basically just trying to make a generic drug off of a drug that was already out the in the world. I forget the name of the actual drug. It was this yellow drug that basically it stained your nylon gloves, which is really interesting to me looking back now. But they were just looking to capitalize on an opportunity. And so, you know, that's what I was doing in a lab for them. But I got to sit in on a business meeting where like market percentage actually opened up when I believe it was Merck Pharmaceuticals completely dropped out of an entire class of opioids. So like 25% of the market just completely stopped from them. And so in the middle of the meeting, like the guy who I was reporting to on the business side of things left the meeting, was like making phone calls, like, oh, we gotta hop on this. And so I was just like, dang, like this is all just profit driven. And, you know, I have a, you know, a hard story in the sense of my family also has like drug issues where like I have some cousins who were addicted to heroin and hard medications. And so, you know, I look at families like the Sacklers and you know, even our government for allowing these types of drugs to be distributed in the first place. Like it's a really big issue that is, it's obviously talked about. People talk about the opioid epidemic, but
Right.
it's not fully understood. And like these pharmaceutical companies, cyclers will pay like $8 billion in fines or something, but they made billions on top of that. So it's
What would they be fined for? I'm totally ignorant to this whole thing.
negligence.
Negligence.
Of just mass production and not putting the correct labels on their drugs formulations, basically saying that these can be extremely addictive and they can, essentially cause harm, overdose, things like that.
Right.
You know,
Now, you may or may not know the answer to this question, but I'm thinking about it. Like, is there a regulatory body that, like the pharmaceutical drug, let's say generic drug A, has to go through this whole process and then they deem it addictive or not? I don't know how that works. Do you know that?
I mean, generally the Food and Drug Administration (FDA) is supposed to regulate all of this, but they're also basically they work in tandem with big pharma, where there's either people from big pharma, like CEOs and vice president level people, will come from big pharma and they'll go work in the FDA, and vice versa, like when their terms are over. And so it's like a revolving door of corruption in that industry, where big pharma is essentially regulating big pharma, and just because something gets approved through like regulation, it doesn't mean it's actually safe. And so to answer your question, I mean, I can't answer your question directly, but that's really what happens. And we've seen that with opioids. We've seen that with I saw it with COVID vaccine actually directly, which we can get to, and just it happens every day with really any drug. It's because I mean, I'm sure that there's a few drugs that could be looked at as like beneficial in the sense if you're having an emergency, it's used for surgery purposes, like lidocaine or something to help numb you. But the reality is, God didn't make us pharmaceutical deficient, and so there really isn't a reason to look to those means of pharmaceuticals unless it's a real emergency. From my perspective, at least.
Right. Okay. So, there's people that I like to play devil's advocate, not because I necessarily have a different viewpoint, but what I think would be interesting to talk about is going, all right, well, do you think that there's any pharmaceutical drugs that are, although it's a business, like beneficial for people? If you look at countries that are not capitalist with their pharmaceuticals, and they're just, is it the capitalism that makes it corrupt? And there's all these like designer drugs, and maybe there's like some things that are beneficial in some ways. I know you said lidocaine for an emergency, but in your opinion, what do you think about all that?
I mean, I'm thinking of insulin as like if someone were to get diagnosed with diabetes, but my philosophy has evolved to the point where it's like I question like what even is diabetes, and how does someone get to that point where they're reliant on this medication that comes from man,
right?
Like I stand firmly in the philosophy that God didn't make us deficient in something that man created, right? He created us in his image, and so therefore I even see something like insulin, a man-made pharmaceutical. I mean, sure, there's allegedly insulin. This is where people might think I'm crazy, where I'm like questioning whether insulin exists or not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it does or doesn't.
Right.
But pinpointing and isolating insulin itself from what's happening inside the human body and comparing it to something that was completely made in a lab, those are two completely different things, and you can't compare the two. And so yes, insulin from outside the body can help people who are diabetic.
Yeah.
Apparently, like I have family who's diabetic, so I'm not like trying to
Stir the pot.
stir the pot or anything. But this is just my perspective on, like, there have been chiropractors who have gotten their patients off of these types of medications,
Absolutely.
like insulin.
Yeah.
And so that just shows that there is power inside the body
Mm-hmm.
that heals the body.
Yeah.
And we don't need to be relying on it at all. Again, if you're in a situation where you need to be on it, I'm not going to give medical advice and say don't take it. Mm-hmm. It's just our vitalistic philosophy as, you know, facilitators of healing and chiropractors is, you know, God does the healing and we're removing the interference, and you really don't need to be relying on this type of substance.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you know, I think that there's definitely merit to our ability to heal as human beings. You know, whatever belief systems that people have. You know, the benefit of chiropractic is understanding that if you put curves in people's necks when they're not there, that their physiology changes. You know, or if you take the curve away, the physiology changes. You know,
puts damaging pressure on the nerves, and then it affects function, which affects the nerve flow. And when the organs aren't functioning the way that they're supposed to, that's where you see dis-ease or diseases pop up from that dis-ease.
Right. It's true, man. Well, you know, I think that something that comes up is like, well, there's an ideology in my belief that people aren't willing to take necessary steps in order for their body to naturally heal, because some people are so far gone that it's not an overnight thing. You know, you may have to dedicate a year or two to
several years. 5, 10.
Yeah. You know, so sometimes people have really physically, mentally, and spiritually drained themselves. And it's not to say that somebody who's like completely, you know, on the floor, I was one of them, you know, using mass amounts of drugs repeatedly every day. I mean, you sleep like 4 days a month kind of a thing, and heavily used lots of different kinds of drugs. And, you know, with chiropractic, I was able to heal relatively quick, considering, you know, being in the military as well, just damaging a lot of the adrenal gland function and just having a lot of traumatic brain injuries and concussions and just being out in the mix in the Middle East. You know, I was able to come back through time. I mean, I'm still working on my health right now. You know, I'm still, it took me a decade to sleep more than 4 hours a night.
Wow.
So I finally, praise be, I finally have an average sleep of 7 hours.
That's great.
It's taken more than a decade for that to happen. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Awesome. But I mean, dude, I've dedicated the past 5 or 6 years of my life to being under chiropractic care. I mean, I've been doing functional medicine. I've been on and off exercising, you know, but I eat a very clean diet, no seed oils, no processed foods. I mean, occasionally I'll be at a restaurant and I'll have some tiramisu and I get down on a little bit of tiramisu.
I believe in like the 80-20, 90-10 rule.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah. But some of these people aren't willing to change their habits, you know. I don't drink alcohol regularly. You know, maybe once every other month, you know.
I don't drink at all.
Yeah. So, you know, there are people who have an incredibly challenging lifestyle. 70% of our country has metabolic disorders, diabetes being one of the higher ones. And so, you know, as you're saying, like, hey, it's possible for people to heal, but their whole life and the people that they surround themselves with would probably be the difference between them healing fast or healing slow, you know? So, it really is kind of a fascinating conversation, because the insulin, as you're saying, can theoretically help somebody. We're in debate, philosophy 4 right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to prove the other side's argument valid.
Mm.
And
Such a fun class.
it is. It's a fun class. And I think that if I was arguing for insulin, then, I think a massive component of it would be convenience, and like efficacy being, I guess, fast to bring down the number on the lab work. I think that if I was on the side to be against insulin, I would bring up the fact that it's conditioning behavioral patterns to, essentially people continue terrible lifestyles and they use something like insulin to
mask it.
Yeah. I mean, again, hey, I'm not here to say that you can't use insulin to like get yourself to a healthier place quicker. I mean, some of the chiropractors that I respect the most, they give people protocols, that are medically integrated, but they're teaching them how to live a healthy lifestyle. And that's the point. You can't continue the program unless you're proving that you're living a healthy lifestyle. I mean, obviously, for me, that would be the best solution.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah. So as you're going through, you're working for the company that made with the opioids, right? You realized you're in the lab.
Yep.
You had this meeting and you realized, okay, I've got this one hit kind of close to home because I'm not really down with opioids and the effect that they have on human beings. Back in the day, they used to extract teeth with pliers.
Yeah.
What I mean? There's some tough dudes back in the day.
No, and there's a time and a place for something like that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think just in general, the opioids have gone off the wall. Like this amount of fentanyl can kill someone.
I know.
Unfortunately, I'll share a personal story about how, I was saying my cousins, 2 of them are alive. One of my cousins passed away from fentanyl. He was 19 years old.
That sucks.
And I didn't really know him that well.
Yeah.
But, I would like to, would have liked to. And
yeah.
It's something that can destroy families. And,
totally.
People don't realize that until it happens to your family. And so, yes, he's a cousin. It's not my direct brother, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
And it puts a huge burden mentally, physically, financially on everybody. Relationally, it changes people. Imagine your son passing away at 19 years old and having to live with that.
Totally.
And it's just because of a street Xanax that he wanted to fall asleep for, but there was laced in fentanyl.
It's fascinating to think, like, such a small amount of fentanyl being laced into it because, why are they cutting it with fentanyl if such a small amount can... It's not like, people cut cocaine with, baby aspirin, they cut it with Tylenol, they cut it with freaking creatine, like, people be cutting cocaine with anything that's white and powdered.
Mm-hmm.
They put freaking pixie sticks and shit in there, so you turn your nose blue. You know what I mean? Like, people will do a lot of crazy things. But the reason they do that is so they could turn, a pound of cocaine into 2 pounds of cocaine and sell it for, whatever they're trying to do that for. But if fentanyl, it's such a small amount, it's not like they're doubling their take home. You know what I mean? It's not really.
No.
Obviously fentanyl has a psychological effect. It's a drug that people can choose to use in whatever amounts. So it gets people loopy. And it probably is the cut because they can be like, yeah, this is heroin, and then they throw a little fentanyl in there, hoping that people can get all zooted on whatever baby aspirin they're saying is heroin,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then to think too, if all the people are watching that are going to come and raid my apartment after this podcast, I'm going to be sleeping and they're going to be like G.I. Joes coming through the window,
Thomas said a lot.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be like colliding with, federal agents. Like what's the ring of cartel versus, just bringing in pharmaceutical drugs for whatever else too,
Or a lot. I was just watching something on social media the other day, and it was saying that J.P. Morgan and Chase had this massive drug bust of like, I don't know how many kilos of cocaine was on a ship where it got
like recently or like in history at some point.
I think this was like in 2011 or something.
Oh, okay.
Probably 10 or so years ago at least.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact year, but we could look it up after this.
Yeah.
And so that happens, and all the workers got in trouble, but J.P. Morgan and Chase gets to operate still to this day. So it's just it's very interesting the way these substances can affect the world, control the world. I call it mind control. It's very heavy to look at it like that.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Hey, man, I used to use cocaine all the time, man. I mean, we were rolling heavy in Las Vegas and in Seattle, bro. Like in two separate times in my life, I was rolling with some big players, and it is crazy, bro. I mean, the way they be bringing stuff in here is just, semi trucks. You know what I mean? It's no joke. Like, a semi truck full of meth. Like it's just like crazy.
Insane.
Yeah. So after you're with this opioid job, then you decided to go to Pfizer?
So in between, there was me graduating during COVID. When COVID started, I was Zoom University and basically couldn't find a job out of college. And so I ended up in a master's program of biomedical sciences online at Rutgers University, where I, wanted to work with rare diseases, work with a professor who had actually done research on the tuberous sclerosis, right? And worked with this mTOR pathway, basically, that apparently has a lot of research with TSC. So I got in, but due to COVID, there was, all this.
It was just weird.
It was all Zoom University. I did Rutgers from Connecticut, and it's like I'm absolutely miserable. I don't want to do this anymore. So I basically became a part-time student and started applying to jobs. I applied to about 4 jobs with 4 companies. I had my LinkedIn on. I'm open to work. Or whatever, right? And I got all these calls all the time, and so I went through about 4 interviews within a 2-week time period, and the only job I got offered was working for Pfizer through a contractor called Mindlance. And my job was a formulation analytical scientist, and I was pretty sure, but I wasn't 100% sure I was working on the COVID vaccine until I got there, and I literally started working on it right away. And I was mind blown. I was like, this is crazy. And I didn't even want to take the job. It took me 23 hours out of 24 to take it. But, after praying about it, thinking about it, and just talking to my family and looking at how I promised my mom that I would, go out and work, considering I was putting this master's off. That's what God's plan was, for me to go work there. And so I had actually reached out to that Project Veritas company prior to even going to work at Pfizer, because I was already under the assumption, knowledge that the COVID vaccine is not something that you should be putting in your body.
Okay, so before we start your Pfizer story, I'd love to understand, like, there's this point where now you get accepted by Pfizer, and you just said you took 23 hours to figure out, do I really want to take this job? you're already kind of questioning it from your last job. But were there any other aspects of maybe relationships that you had or just experiences that you had that you were like, how did you get to, I don't know if I should be putting this in my body?
I wrote a paper for the Rutgers Master's Program. I mean, it was all just part of this awakening process, quote unquote awakening process where, I thought COVID was extremely questionable from the start, and considering how I saw it all starting to play out over the summer, 2 weeks to sell this bread, and then, we're going to start wearing masks. And then it just never stopped. And then it got into we're going to mandate vaccines for everybody. It really was just that, I think. I did watch one video I watched a QAnon video or something too. We can get into QAnon and mind control if you want to, and we're that's all similar to the Bolshevik Revolution back in the 1930s, I think, where Operation Trust of trust the plan, the government's gonna come to save you. No, they're not. They're actually the ones trying to kill you. Is basically the reality of what ICQ/QAnon, whatever that it means. People say they're different. I'm like, who cares? I think it's all one big
integrated
psyop that's layered, and it's supposed to divide the freedom movement. And I mean, it's meant to wake you up to a point, I think, and maybe some people wake up after it, but I don't know, I think it's still meant to keep you in the left-right divide and conquer system where, there's idolatry towards Trump or whoever Q is in this figure versus just having faith in God. I think that's really what Q distracts people from, is having faith in God. And so I truly think that God is behind really everything that is playing out, good and bad, because sometimes God has to put humanity through a storm in order to really teach us lessons. And so I look at COVID as a definite blessing in disguise for sure, where I look back, if COVID never happened, who knows, I'd probably still be in big pharma, and I'd probably be absolutely miserable. And a lot of bad things have to happen in order for a lot of good things to happen.
I agree. I think for sure whenever I talk about COVID, I always see it as this pinnacle for holistic health, because people are curious about, it was quackery. It was the ultimate fuckery. You know what I mean? It was
scamdemic.
Yeah.
That's what I call it, scamdemic.
I used to be epidemiologist for the military before COVID.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so we used to, in the Middle East, this is what we were going around, grabbing bugs and smearing the bugs and testing communicable diseases and just basically planning for people not to get sick, So when COVID happened, it was intense because my uncle, a chiropractor, one of the most principled dudes on the planet, and me, I'm like, this is really no big deal. The common cold, let's just look it up.
It's the flu relabeled.
Yeah, even worse, the flu the years before were more devastating than what we were seeing. And
well, it went to zero.
Yeah.
The flu went to zero.
Yeah.
For sure. So what happened?
Right. So all these numbers were just arbitrary, it seemed. And, my mom and dad were nervous, and so were the other people in my family. And I was living with my mom and dad because I was getting ready to buy a house. So we were just chilling in their little back room for a while, waiting for the house to close. But then we had to start bleaching the freaking groceries and the bottoms of our shoes. We couldn't leave the house. And I was like, I love you guys, but I can't do this. I can't do this. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to go. I was like, I'll live in my car. I'm all right.
I respect that.
Yeah. I was like, hey, you guys are killing your immune system. If you really have a fighting chance against the flu, you probably don't want to kill every living organism on your body. You know?
Yeah.
You don't want to ingest the bleach because inherently you're touching the bleach every time you touch the bag or whatever you buy, you know. So crazy. So you're going through this time, you're going, this is a little twacked out. Now you decide, okay, God's put me here. Everything that is happening for a reason. And I love my mama. So I'm going to go check this out. What was your first day like?
My manager was just explaining to me, giving me the tour, but one of the first things she said to me was like, "Oh, are you vaccinated?" I said, "No." I was like, "I'm going to wait." She's like, "Oh, well, we can get you signed up."
Yeah.
And I pounded my head. I'm like, "Okay, great." And then didn't hear from that again. Like, I just
let that one
never
slide.
got led into signing up for it.
Huh.
And basically after the first day, I went back home to Connecticut for about a week because I didn't have to be on site for a week because of COVID restrictions and doing all the online trainings. They said, "Oh yeah, get out of here." And I said, "Okay, cool." And so I got paid to work from home and then ended up, going back to Boston a week later. And that's where it really started, where I just started to, I worked on a small scale manufacturing team where they would either create new formulations and we would start stability testing to see if the formulation was up to par with what they wanted, or I would do stability testing through 4 different assays of basically just 1 week time period, 1 month, 6 months, those types of intervals of just testing the samples where, they're frozen in these minus 80 degrees Celsius freezers, or they had multiple formulations. So some of them were minus 80 degrees Celsius, some of them were minus 20 degrees Celsius, some of them were walk-in freezer temperatures or refrigerator temperatures. So just doing stability studies. And basically when I was there, I started in March of 2021. So booster shots were already getting put into people, and so I had nothing to do with the initial formulation process, and my identity as a whistleblower couldn't have started then. It was more I was just seeing how everything played out in the alternative media space versus the media, watching, paying attention to everything politics, with CNN, Fox News, seeing what was happening, where CNN's got this death toll and Fox News is telling people another thing, oh, it's no big deal, and people in the alternative media basically saying there's, some people are saying there's no virus, which is actually where that's my perspective now, where I don't subscribe to virology even as a actual science. There's a reason why the germ theory is still called the germ theory, and it's because it's never actually been proven, where they've never proven that a particle supposedly called a virus has been isolated from a human sample and be proved to cause sickness and disease in another person, which I go through in my documentary. And there's several people, way more than just myself, ex-medical doctors who have lost their licenses for speaking out about this, because when you come to understand this, just how fraudulent this field is, that is when you start to see the sinister nature of what is really happening, and that this is an attack on humanity, and it's one of the worst attacks that could ever happen in my mind, because where are vaccines initially injected? They're injected at birth, right away.
Right.
In kids who cannot communicate to you that they're in pain. And so, when you take the vitalistic philosophy, you can't inject health. So what's the purpose of any vaccine ever? And you look into the ingredients, the way they're formulated, they're essentially just toxic poison bombs that are meant to be ticking time bombs in a way that shouldn't be going into anybody, And so that's my perspective on that.
Yeah.
And it evolved as well. Like I said earlier, like I initially thought it was the flu rebranded, but I've woken up to this terrain philosophy, which really has to do with dissolving this illusion of fear. And like they're telling you there's an invisible enemy when you can't see it. You know, and that is really what the mind control is of this Scientologists, we'll call them, of pushing this narrative of making people sick. And I'm not saying people don't get sick either.
Right.
It's just the explanation is logically fallacious. Like with Dr. Thornhill's class, affirming the consequent, if A, then B. If someone gets sick, then virus caused sickness. It doesn't have to be true. You know, one can be true without the other.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an example actually where if we're say we went and walked in the woods together out there and we found hoof prints, right? I could say, oh, look, a hoof print. Must have been a unicorn. It's like, no, silly Justin. It could have been a horse. It could have been a goat. It could have been just about anything else.
Yeah.
It's not the unicorn because we haven't actually isolated that. And so the explanation for what a virus could be is a whole plethora of things. It could be excess pharmaceuticals. It could be your body's going through a detox process. You know, think of it like that in a way. Stress, environment, etc.
Yeah.
And so, a little tangent there, but I just
for sure.
Had to get that out there.
Okay, so I'd like to take it back to understanding what was happening when you were trying to make sure that the virus is stable. Like, you have these different temperatures that the viruses are being...
The vaccine.
I'm sorry, the vaccines, yes. The vaccines being stable. Is it... And how do they speed up the process? Like, they're not waiting a year to make sure that the virus is stable. They're doing something, right? What is that?
Well, they used an emergency use authorization process from, you know, the FDA was granting this emergency use process for this mRNA technology, which there's basically a conspiracy there where mRNA technology is not necessarily a new thing. It's been, you know, pre-planned for like 50 years, and Moderna was working on this mRNA technology for about 10 years before it even became a public company. Their first product was the COVID shot, but they were working on this technology for 10 years.
Well, COVID's been around for a long time too. Different strains of COVID.
Allegedly. With the virus and everything, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, Moderna's been around for 10 years, but they didn't have a product. They were saving it for this COVID shot, which, you know, once they got the emergency use authorization, they, you know, if you looked at the stock market, people made millions, if not billions on that stock, and same with Pfizer. But so BioNTech was creating this mRNA technology, and they are a German pharmaceutical company, and they worked with Pfizer because they essentially didn't have like the production capabilities of Pfizer. Allegedly, some people believe, and I believe there's evidence that shows that these products actually just came from the United States military, and so the government was heavily involved in all this. But to get to your stability question, there's the minus 80 degrees Celsius freezer, which was where the phosphate buffer saline product was stored. And then there was a minus 20 degrees where, so there were two different formulations. There was a phosphate buffer saline called PBS, and then there was a tris buffer. And so they would be both stored at those temperatures, like minus 80 degrees Celsius and then minus 20, and then I think like 0 degrees Celsius, and then like 2 to 8 degrees Celsius or something. Mm-hmm. And Basically the story behind one of the big things that I wanted to expose was the fact that the phosphate buffer saline product was the one that had all the clinical testing behind it, where the tris buffer product is the one that got approved for emergency use authorization on 5 to 11-year-olds without any clinical testing. And the argument that Pfizer made to the FDA was that it's the same product, but we just changed the buffer system so that the storage temperatures can be an easier use for pharmacies and hospitals. Which, you know, from my perspective, if there was a real pandemic, that would make sense. But when you look at it from how I really look at it, with there was no virus and that this is just an attack on humanity, that this was sinister in nature. And so they're covering their butt legally in one other way by committing this fraud through this emergency use product or authorization, through allowing a product that had no clinical testing at all. And it was just bioequivalence stability studies that allowed for that product to be approved.
What does bioequivalence mean?
The same formulation other than the buffer system, which is allows for the stability of the product to maintain integrity.
Okay, so is that like a shelf life?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the whole, from what I understand about adjuvants in vaccinations, essentially adjuvants are they playing a similar role to extend the shelf life? Because they claim the transport of vaccinations in like a refrigerated truck, you know, there's these variables of, is the truck going to drive through the desert? It's going to be hot one day, and then refrigeration is X, Y, and Z. I mean, to me, sometimes that seems ludicrous because there's refrigeration semi trucks that travel like all day, all night.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to figure out, like, you know, what is the reason for adjuvants really? If somebody could just take the bacteria or the virus or whatever they're claiming is in the vaccination, and it could just be that by itself, then, you know, that theoretically would make the most sense if there were viruses in the bacteria that you could see in the world that are causing these diseases.
Right. I mean, I don't know. The whole thing with adjuvants, I'm so far removed from the pharmaceutical industry itself. I mean, my perspective is that any ingredient that's in there shouldn't be going inside us. And so adjuvants included. I mean, COVID vaccine had polyethylene glycol, which was supposedly helping with the transport of the drug product. But to me, like, it's all unnecessary. It's just my perspective on it all.
I mean, if you cough on your doorknob and then somebody else touches it, you don't need polyethylene glycinol to get somebody sick.
Right.
Right. You just got to cough right on that door handle right there.
Yeah.
That's funny. So, at what point was it for you where you started to go, all right, this is not it? I mean, I've watched your videos on your website, and if you guys are wondering, they're incredible. It's
Project Whistleblower is the documentary name.
Yep.
And my website is justintegrity.net.
Yep. That's a good name. Just integrity. Yeah. That's a good one.
My friend Rihanna helped me come up with the name.
Yeah.
She loved it.
It's a sick name.
I mean, I just, I tell the truth, and
Yeah.
it kind of puts me in a spot where I have to, I don't like to rub people the wrong way, but truth is love and love is truth. And if you're not telling the truth, then you're not coming from a loving perspective.
For sure.
Like when I come across these when I came across this, conversation with virology and everything, like some people have never had this conversation before. And so to be able to facilitate it in a way where they can understand my perspective and see why other people have the same perspective too, it's a really cool thing to do. And when, you create that ripple effect, it can create a wave and over time, because if you disagree with me, go prove me wrong. Go look into all of the initial, it's called the Enders paper of 1954 with cell culture, where he was describing how he isolated measles, which it was basically all backed on assumption, a premeditated assumption that measles was present in the sample that he had already created. So therefore, when you're using assumption, you're not following a scientific method, and therefore you're not doing science. It's called pseudoscience. So, yeah. But my whole thing with COVID and working for Pfizer, I was working with Project Veritas, this undercover journalist company, right? I reached out to them initially, and then it ended up where I reached out to them like the third time is when they wanted to work with me. I reached out to them in August, still got nothing. I got a phone call, and then they wanted to work with me and do like undercover work in September and October is when I started doing the thing, basically. And so that's where things got really crazy.
So, okay, when you're calling Veritas, what was the idea that you had in mind was going to happen? Like, what was your projected outcome that you wanted?
Great question. Probably that I was just going to be able to share my whistleblower testimony with the world. I didn't even necessarily need to like do this undercover stuff. It was more like it was their idea. Like, oh, we're going to give you cameras to go obtain this information.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, sure. I'll do what I have to do to get a story, basically. That's really all I wanted, was to get a story that was powerful enough to share with the world, to open people's eyes from the perspective of a Pfizer whistleblower. And I was 23 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So like very young, naive young man. That was where I was all coming from.
But you had a lot of purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's hard.
I mean the end goal though was, I mean, it, like I said, it didn't need to be this undercover sting operation thing. That's what they wanted for me. And so the vision was
they're like, you give us this, we give you that.
It would have been a whole series of these videos that I had to go reobtain, of a series basically exposing what was really going on inside the walls of Pfizer, and a bunch of documentation and everything that I gave them. But it kind of all blew up in my face, and so we can get into that.
yeah, totally. That's okay.
In a good way, it blew up in my face.
Yeah, totally. So what were you wanting to whistleblow? I mean, like, your main message at this point, because it changes in your story. Go watch the whole thing. Don't miss out. But at this stage, you're like, you know what? I found out what? And I want the world to know.
Initially, it was that you shouldn't be putting the COVID vaccine in your body. And the most powerful thing was Nick Warren was the vice president of Pfizer, of Biotherapeutics and Pharmaceutical Sciences. He was like the head honcho of the building that I worked in. I had a meeting with him basically saying that he had gamed the FDA, lying by omission, through the approval process of the 5 to 11-year-old vaccines that I was talking about. So basically admitting that he had, knowledge of approving this tris buffer without any clinical testing, when the PBS buffer had the clinical testing, and he basically danced around certain questions that the FDA had for him to be able to just let this go by. But the other things that I was whistleblowing on were, I took these vials and put them under a microscope with Dr. Carrie Madej, who is an internal medicine osteopathic doctor, I believe, where we looked at these under a microscope, and it did not sit well with me what we witnessed. We put blood on a slide, we put the vaccine on a slide, and we saw coagulation of the cells immediately. So that's the theory behind what's going on with, potential blood clots coming from people's necks or from their groin area or wherever else they're happening.
Young men dying of heart attacks at 25 years old.
Yeah, it's
spontaneous heart attack.
Of young athletes as well. I mean, there's been a correlation with it all, and it's not a conspiracy theory.
They've come out with research since.
Right? It's all coming to light, and so
yeah.
Information like that with the microscope, as well as my manager saying that her name is Conwall, and I will preface before talking about her that these people, especially my manager, she thought she was doing good for the world. So I'm not necessarily calling her evil or anything like that. She was just very naive, under a spell, basically, thinking that what she's doing is noble, which, I mean, if the circumstances were real, then sure, they would have been. But the reality is that these vaccines were causing harm on a worldwide scale, and it's means for negligence and crimes against humanity from my whistleblower perspective, where she was saying that the whole thing was turning into a money game with the mRNA vaccine technology because they were using it as an opportunity to push the flu mRNA vaccine technology after COVID got approved, as well as saying that the vaccines had side effects for 50 years and they could never get approved, and that they were just taking advantage of the emergency use authorization to use this mRNA technology now, saying that Catherine Jensen and Albert Bourla, CEO of Pfizer, and Ugur Sahi, the CEO of BioNTech, had no idea what was actually going on. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, they had already approved the vaccine for like 99% efficacy, saying that this thing was safe to putting in your body. But behind the scenes, you have one of the lead scientists on the product saying, we have no idea. The CEOs have no idea what's going on. And so the reason why this all doesn't come out is due to, me being involved in, essentially breaking recording consent laws. And so Veritas gave me this equipment. And so they're all part of that as well. And so I had no idea about recording consent laws when I went through all this. And, I've openly said what I've done. And so nobody's come after me based off of my affidavits that I've filed for crimes against humanity, saying that this trumps whatever recording consent laws you are claiming protect you, because this has impacted the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people on this earth. And so that's significant. Yeah, I mean, that's where I come from like a sovereignty standpoint too, of like, you can't use laws created by man to dictate God's laws of do no harm and, having informed consent. The public was not informed of any of this. They had no idea. They were all basically they're all under the spell of the media and the government and big pharma, where behind the scenes, if they really saw what was happening, if you can save the life of one person, anything is worth doing. And so I know it would have opened the eyes of way more than just one person, because I've received feedback from people seeing it and they were like, how did this not come forward? And so there was Conwall, her manager, Ramin. He was saying, he created a metaphor with the vaccine, basically saying, like, did chip companies get mad when you say that chips aren't healthy for you? Of course. Like when I related the vaccine and vaccine mandates, and he said, and the idea behind chip companies is to manufacture the product so that people keep on taking it, and then people keep on eating chips and increasing my consumption, and then I end up having a heart attack and I'm going to die.
Right.
But nobody's talking about that.
Well,
That's
and it
almost
doesn't happen after you eat the first bag either.
it's almost a direct quote.
You know?
But yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
but to look at that as a metaphor for vaccines is definitely a bit sinister, considering the reports that were happening with what was going on with people's hearts, as well as prior to that in the conversation, he said, when I brought up and I was eliciting him, right, because I basically learned how to, like, I
Get
learned
information.
intelligence. Yeah, I learned how to get information from people.
How did you learn that?
Through the journalists, they would coach me up basically. And so, I mean, this was an easy one where I was using a real world anecdote that had happened like a day or two prior, where my mom's friend's mom, or something like that.
Yeah.
I forget their direct quote, but had died at the age of 77 in her bathroom, like 4 to 8 hours after taking the Pfizer booster shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just said booster shot because I knew that it was the Pfizer shot, because the only one that was approved at that point in time of the video was Pfizer. So Remain admitted, oh yeah, it must have been Pfizer, after I said that she died after taking a booster shot. And then he basically, he wouldn't admit, oh yeah, we know the vaccines are killing people, but he very well basically did through the whole explanation. And so it's crazy stuff that I was in there obtaining, and for all of it to get thrown by the wayside, have a meeting with James O'Keefe, the CEO of Project Veritas, after Thanksgiving. It was November. Yeah, no, it was, I think it was early December 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, in Hartford, Connecticut, where I met him. We had probably $600 dinner at Capitol Grill. And,
Nice.
Yeah, nice, right? Look at what we have, right? We have all this nice steaks for you, Justin, but we're not going to tell your story to protect the company, basically, is what he said. But we'll give you an undercover journalist job because we feel bad for you. And I basically told him that this was a crime against humanity and that there's blood on your hands if you don't tell the story. Let me tell my whistleblower testimony. But I stayed at Pfizer for 4 more months, and I ended up taking that job because I had no idea what else to do with my life. I couldn't stay at Pfizer anymore and reobtain that information that I had obtained. And God was just in my ear saying, you got to go work for them and go get your story back. So that's what I made a promise.
You mean Veritas, Project Veritas, right?
Yeah.
So this is the whole thing, right? Where you realize, okay, I just want to know how you keep a straight face, knowing that you're getting information. I mean, did you practice in front of the mirror, or you just were so committed to getting the information, you're just like, I'll do whatever it takes to get it?
Well, so at Pfizer, we had to wear a mask. So it was a little easier.
Fitting.
Well, I mean, there were, in the video, you can see Conwall, she had her mask below her mouth, which was cool. I think, she subconsciously knew. That you didn't have to actually wear it.
Yeah.
I wore a mask at Pfizer, so I would hide behind that in a way as dancing around that, asking just questions and
no shifty eyes.
I forget. I think I might have had that conversation with my mask below my chin, but it takes practice, and it's the quote of like first person to speak after you say a hard question loses. That silence is golden, and you let it. Even just let it become awkward, just sit there, and wait for them to say something. Is really, that's what it came down to, is just listening to the advice of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you got Veritas. Now you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna go hit this company up because you gave them your story.
And I didn't back it up myself.
Right, meaning that you didn't save a second copy.
No, I had some stuff, but I had none of the videos. Mm-hmm. I was giving that all away. So I had documentation a little bit, but that was about it.
And that's why you felt crossed, because the videos, they took the videos and they wouldn't give them back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it happened. So
Yeah.
I said, I'm gonna somehow get it back.
Yeah. And you're like, all right, hey, sometimes you gotta sleep with the enemy, you know?
Yes.
Just kidding.
That's
No,
basically
yeah.
that's basically what happened though. And I mean, these people, some of them might have been my best friends faking it, and some of them might have been my best friends. I don't know. It's hard because, like, what happened to me is it's like a one-of-one situation, so there's no way of really knowing. But yeah, I went to go work at Veritas after resigning for 4 months, and we weren't doing Pfizer stories or anything right away, and so like that kind of ticked me off. I was like, I want to investigate Pfizer right now,
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the way the investigative journalism world worked at Veritas. I got there and they wanted to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, like teacher stories, and so, I mean, that's cool and all, but it was kind of also, from my perspective, a distraction from like what
the
was
whole
really
world
happening
order. Yeah. Yeah.
with the pharmaceutical fraud, which was my niche. And so, that's what I did essentially to train, is I went on undercover dates as a straight man, but I got paid to, sit down in front of, gay men basically wanted to get in my pants. And, you have to basically manipulate the situation in a way. I know we don't like to use the word manipulate as chiropractors, but that's basically how it was. Like,
Yeah.
I'd have to put it out there in a way where be like, oh, I'm a top tier gay guy. I don't even kiss until like the 5th date or something like that. That's what I'd have to do to like protect myself. It's so funny.
That's a funny story.
That's basically what I had to do.
Funny story. Well, that's great, because it's awesome, because even though it's a fabrication, you're like setting yourself up to have a little bit of arrogance. I think that's hilarious, bro. That's so funny.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I'm a top tier gay guy. That's funny, bro. I really love that. I respect that.
A funny part of all this too is, I mean, there's information in my documentary that couldn't have been included, and there was this guy, David from the United Nations. He was like one of the secretaries of Greenberg, or whatever her name was, like the UN representative for the United Nations. He was their secretary, so he like wrote all her stuff and everything. And I had a meeting with him. I had like 4 or 5 meetings with him.
Yeah.
Never got kissed, but it was very close, and it was like very, very tough, because this gentleman was like 6'4", and I definitely would have been the bottom. And he was dropping, like, our first meeting, he dropped like $600 on dinner, I think, on me,
Really?
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that's how into me he was. He was like willing to shell it out. I mean, he had an Amex card. He was happy to just throw it on that. So
Yeah.
he must have made pretty good money too, because I mean, he was talking about like going on vacation in Vermont and all this crazy stuff, like when we didn't even know each other. So.
Yeah. So during these dates, your MO is to collect what information for what story?
I mean, it depends on who your subject is.
Yeah.
So during my training, a lot of my access would be going through these dating apps. That's why it was the whole, you had to basically pretend to be gay or bisexual or something so that you had access to people, because I had all these subscriptions on all the apps. I had the Tinder, the Bumble, the Hinge, right? Those 3. I had basically the first or second tier subscription where you could just swipe as much as possible.
Yeah.
The people put their job titles, and you're just looking for that. And so people can match with you as well, right? So you get
Yeah.
to see who's matched with you, and you can just swipe on them.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I was going out with more men than women is because there's a superiority in corporate America
Right.
for the most part when it comes to those types of job titles, and also who is single, right?
Yeah.
Like men who are gay are more single than women who are in those types of
Right.
situations are
Yeah.
typically married
Huh.
for the most part. Like they're up in their, they're married by the time they're in their 30s or 40s when you get to that position. And so it was like I didn't go out with any really big superior vice president women, but like I said, I went out with the Secretary of the United Nations
Yeah.
for men. And, I went out with this guy, Jordan Walker, the gentleman from Pfizer. That was the biggest story in Project Veritas history with the mRNA director, right? Which is a big, clicky, catchy title, So, but there were also other operations as well. Like, I got one story in Long Island that's also in my documentary that had to do with this thing called Ed Camp, where I was a master's student who was looking to become a teacher, and so I was shadowing at these Ed Camp events, basically looking to learn information and basically hearing about all the diversity, equity, inclusion talk and how these teachers were using this diversity, equity, inclusion as a form of basically getting kids to want to become gay or trans or, go question their gender, all those things, which, I'm a big freedom guy. If you want to do those things, you can do those things,
Yeah.
but to put it on kids is where I definitely draw the line. Like I don't think that is right at all. And so I'm actually proud of that type of journalism to be able to report on a story like that and see, people who admitted things to me just because I asked questions, and
Yeah.
they were saying, oh yeah, like we're involved in all that, and it's all politics too.
So this is all happening in the span of 4 months.
At Project Veritas,
Right. All these dates and meeting
I
these
worked
people.
I worked there for like 10 or 11 months.
Okay. So regardless, there's a lot of things happening in a pretty short amount of time. I mean, you're having to put on all these different hats. I mean, did you have a social life?
I called them masks.
Masks. Okay, you had to put on all these different masks. What is the creative process for preparing for? I mean, really, it's getting into character. I mean,
Creating
you're an actor.
alias. Creating an
Yeah,
alias,
yeah.
absolutely.
What was your process?
You just gotta create somebody who's 80% you and 20% not real.
Okay. Did you like make notes?
Yeah. Wrote up an alias, typed it up, age, hometown, siblings, no siblings, what your parents' names were, that type of stuff. And
Yeah.
A lot of times you could also do it on the fly. Like you just got to keep track of what you're saying
Yeah.
at that point too.
Yeah.
So, like for the Ed Camp one, I didn't come up with my alias. I went to the event and I was given my alias right then and there by my colleague because he said, you're a better fit to go than me because you're younger. You'll fit in better.
Mhm.
And I said, okay,
yeah.
let's do it. He's like, you're David Deft and you're a master's student who goes to Fordham in education. And so I just took the rest and I basically used whatever alias I used on those dates and just turned it into a master's student.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
really the main thing with all of that is you don't want to give these people information about you because if you start creating a rabbit trail about yourself,
Yeah.
they
It's
can
too
start
much
keeping
to-
track about it.
Yeah.
It's always putting it on them
Yeah.
is what we were taught.
So when they ask you a personal question, you just circle it back around.
For the most part, I mean, you would answer it, but still bring it back to them.
Yeah.
And there's
So-
an art to that.
So if I'm like, hey, we're I don't mean to put you on the spot, but at the same time I do. If we're on a date right now and I'm like, hey man, where'd you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in New York City.
Yeah.
What about you? You know,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I would say Connecticut or something
yeah.
probably, or like Southern Connecticut, or I don't know. I mean, Connecticut would actually probably draw attention to where I actually grew up, so probably it depends. I mean, I haven't looked at an alias in 3 years at this point, so
Yeah.
definitely a little rusty.
That's okay. That's okay, brother.
But
But
yeah,
it's fascinating. I mean, you gotta be quick. I mean, you have to be intelligent because your brain is essentially having like two conversations at one time, right?
yeah.
I mean, I imagine that's what it's like,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're trying to be you're present, obviously. You're somewhat interested as the alias that you are in this person.
You gotta act interested.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. You acting interested in this person. You're interested to get information. So how is it like speaking another language and you're just like translating it from one language to another? What does it feel like to process that?
Very high cortisol level is what I put it at. It's like don't mess up, you know.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah.
always thinking about both things, right? Like I'm thinking about who I am behind the scenes and how I can tie it into the story
Yeah,
in a way, and also keeping track of my timeline that I've created.
right. And not reacting to the things you absolutely disagree with.
Yeah, that too. Like
Yeah.
you know,
You
one
just
time
like
I
sweet dude. That's
one
amazing.
time I was on a meeting and I had no idea what a surrogate meant with a gentleman who was talking about having kids as a gay man. And I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "You don't know what a surrogate is?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, where I guess it's when you basically one of you implants a woman and she gets pregnant for you guys.
Right.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But it came up. So
You're like, I never tried to have babies before. Sorry. Yeah.
naivety is really big.
Yeah, like if you don't know, you're just like, oh, I don't know.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's easier to just be like, oh, I got no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, so you go on and collect all this information, and after you get the information, you report it back to the leader of Veritas.
Well, you do this thing called an AAR, after action report,
Right.
and then you basically transcribe the videos that you did, throw it through an AI reader, basically get most of the transcript, and then transcribe the rest that it messed up, because it's really important to get good audio. So you'd probably have at least two sources, your camera and then another backup source. Sometimes you do three though, because one is none, two is one, and three you're good to go. Like
Sure.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Where anything can happen out in the field.
Right,
Sometimes your phone dies, the camera dies. Like if the camera were to die and you lose the video, you still at least have audio.
Yeah.
et cetera.
So what's your setup? You have a
It depends on
lav mic.
It really depended on the situation. I turned this into a button camera, so you'd have a button that I'd break this button off, and then you be kind of like this, where there's a camera here. You slide it in through the button, and then you put a fake button on. And so that's why
Like a button that is like see-through or something.
it's like a fake button.
Yeah,
But it allows the camera to.
Where do you acquire that?
You
eBay?
can find them on there.
Yeah.
Totally. I can point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I mean, and it is really hard to see, unless you're
Well, you're not looking at it. I mean,
unless you're looking for it, and like
yeah.
of those,
Yeah, right.
you're really not going to notice because you're infatuated by the person in front of you because
Eye contact.
it's a date.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
For me, it's a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm getting paid.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So. Did it feel like a spy at some points? You just like
Definitely.
Did it feel awesome at some points?
Oh yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Thrilling.
For sure.
Thrilling.
It was thrilling.
A little bit of adrenaline.
Fun, adrenaline.
Like you said, a little bit
It's
of cortisol.
also traumatizing.
Yeah.
For sure. Just because You couldn't talk about your job. You had to create all this other life and live another life half your day, and the other half you're like,
Swiping on Grinder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally, dude. Yeah. Well, dude, one of the most committed people I've met.
Thanks.
You know?
I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, bro. I mean, that's admirable. You have a goal and you go get it. I mean,
Yeah.
not many people are committed like that, you know, and have the emotional capacity also to do it for a while.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so I did get the biggest story in company history, too, the Jordan Walker story. And that story allowed me to reobtain the footage that we were discussing about Conwall and Ramin. I didn't reobtain the Nick Warren information, but I basically created rapport in a way with Veritas and then O'Keefe Media Group, run by James O'Keefe. I created rapport in a way because I was like a top journalist at that point, and I found out they had my footage. It was saved on Vimeo, and so and I reobtained some transcripts. So I was just blown away, that they still even had it, and I was like, "This is all God's doing. I didn't do any of this. I'm a vessel at this point." And so.
But they told you they didn't have it, or they just told you they weren't going to give it to you?
No, I knew they had it. When I started working there, I knew they had it. I just didn't know how to access it. It was locked away, but then I got it based off.
How did you get it?
It was sent to me from my colleague, Nightingale, was her code name. Her name's Alicia Gamble, where she's in my documentary, where she sent it to me when she wasn't supposed to. And that was the beginning of their end and exposing them, where my theory is that they were all part of a counterintelligence operation, basically.
Yeah, this was the most fascinating part. I'm telling you guys, you got to go watch it. We got 3 people that have been with us for an hour. Congratulations, guys. This is amazing.
Well, the counterintelligence comes into play from that initial FBI raid that occurred, from the whole microscope stuff, and then Stu Peters and Carrie Madej had a video that came out, and then the FBI raid occurred several weeks after that, where they said that this FBI raid happened because of Ashley Biden's diary being stolen by Project Veritas, which I thought was extremely suspicious considering it was a story they investigated the prior October in 2020, where the information I was doing was 2 weeks prior to that. So very suspicious. And then James is on Fox News the night of all of that happening with Sean Hannity, which, if you understand what Operation Mockingbird is and how the CIA infiltrated the media and was essentially in charge of the media and putting journalists as assets in the media, you really can have your eyes opened as to who these people really are and what their true motives are, which is, I'll say it again, it's really to control the minds of masses, mind control.
Yeah. Well, I started out in the military as a Korean cryptologic linguist. And we went to this language school, and some of the coolest people I ever met were PsyOps guys in the military. Yeah. I mean, it's a whole other level of understanding human behavior. I mean, we used to hear stories of them going into different, probably not a city, but a town, where they can go and change the broadcasts of that nation, and they broadcast whatever they need to support the mission, which is, it's crazy intense. They'll in the Middle East take over the loudspeaker that does all 5 prayers, and play a sound that it gives you an instant migraine. Just the frequency of the sound, they play it through the whole speaker system. It goes and just basically paralyzes everybody, because you just have to cringe. And then the guys go in, do their job, whatever that is, and then exit stage left. But it is crazy. They'll go and give certain charities something to go out to the public and change the belief system of people. You know, I mean, benevolent or not, it fascinates me to understand human behavior and how people are being directed, you know, or influenced. Is it's my belief that every person makes a choice and everybody has sovereignty. Absolutely, people can be influenced, but it's my core belief that we're choosing every action. Because for me to have somebody else make me do something feels like I'm choosing to be a victim.
Mm.
And I'd rather just control myself. I understand that I have been influenced in a fucked up way. I've been fucked over 8 million times. I nearly almost died a few times because of things that I've been hearing and making choices based off of others. But I feel like I have no attachment to my past or the decisions I've made. I don't feel any judgment because I take responsibility for every part of it, even the mistakes. So, you know, there is a threshold of an average mind where the average mind, and I don't mean it in like a level of intellect, but just like you're saying, naivety, somebody who's just ignorant, like they literally have never been exposed to the ways that somebody can communicate with you and create emotions for somebody who's ignorant. You know, like, well, I can create this emotion for this ignorant person and then, you know, persuade them to do X, Y, or Z. So maybe I'm going off on a little tangent here.
No, I mean, what you're talking about though is it's powerful to take ownership and not play that victim card, which to me has always come up for me of like, am I playing the victim as a whistleblower saying, oh, I'm the victim from this situation, which I easily could, but I also look at it from the perspective of, no, I'm not a victim. I felt like I was, but then I've overcome that and am now the creator of my reality. And I do take ownership for everything that happened. I may not necessarily agree with the way everything played out
absolutely.
and happened.
Yeah.
Can acknowledge that I feel like I was manipulated and made decisions based off of that,
Right.
but I also acknowledge I did have freedom and free will, and you know, I made certain choices.
Yeah, dude. Hey, every
And
choice
naivety comes into play as to why I made certain choices as well. Which
absolutely,
I can be transparent about.
for sure, dude. I mean, me too. My life has been a series of naive choices. Still, a little less today than other times, but
Yeah.
But it has been a pretty
Same
good
here.
series.
Same here.
Yeah. Totally. So you're here at Project Veritas for 10 months. Now you've just received back your footage. Now it seems like as soon as that happened, the whole thing crumpled.
So yeah, I left Project Veritas shortly after the Jordan Tristan Walker story.
Yeah.
That Ed Camp story came out, right, which was a 3-part education exposure series that happened in Long Island, and I resigned right after because I was given the job opportunity to go follow James O'Keefe and work at O'Keefe Media Group, which several other number of my colleagues went to go. And I needed access to James, and I basically needed access to Nightingale a little bit. And so
Why is that?
Just because they were all involved with me in the beginning, and I was on a mission to fully corroborate everything to the best of my ability to where I felt like my testimony would have been bulletproofed, which I feel like I did a pretty good job at that, and that's why I created the documentary Project Whistleblower, because I had all this information I obtained, but I wasn't going to just start going on podcasts and start talking about it without something put together.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have made any sense to anybody.
Yeah,
you know? So
well, it's a long story. I mean, you're committed, dude. I mean, there's years between it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
that's a long time.
3-year story, basically.
Yeah, it's a fucking long time to be committed to an outcome that you wanted, dude. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your
So
wife is going to be lucky. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
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 Exactly.
No, when I want something, I set my eyes on it. That's a
Yeah,
fact.
there you go.
But yeah, so then I was at O'Keefe Media Group for about 6 months doing the same type of work where, I mean, James had this mission of like giving cameras out to the world and creating undercover journalists all over the country. And so I don't know how well that's come to fruition necessarily. Getting people to basically work for him for free. I don't think it's actually working, but that's what it was. And so we also were supposed to be doing journalist work in the field and getting stories, which I got a few stories working for him. There was one on like Fox News and Tucker Carlson, and then one with the FBI that corroborated a story that had to do with basically transgender women who are actually men in prisons in Washington, basically saying that they're the opposite gender to be able to basically rape the prisoners, which is horrible stuff. And so,
Yeah.
Also during my time at OMG, there were two sources that were brought to my attention. One by the name of Kim Witzak, who was actually working with the FDA and is part of their regulation, and she had a story on a whistleblower story on Prozac, basically, and how it was prescribed off label to her husband who killed himself. She just has all this information basically from a lawsuit that she had, and she was willing to give testimony in an interview and share it, but was completely, not given that platform, even though I flew all the way to Minnesota to meet with her and have dinner with her, which, partially broke my heart. And then there is actually human trafficking, like child human trafficking and exploitation, at the very least, exploitation that happens on Twitter.
Yeah.
Where it basically, Raymond Bouchard is a gentleman who I connected with. He's actually in Connecticut. I connected with him through, my mom used to actually do advocacy work for human trafficking. And so she knew Raymond. And so we connected. He had this big story on Twitter. He has this huge presentation, all this evidence of basically how these certain terms can be used once you turn off the search settings, basically, in a certain way, where you can find like teenagers, like for sure underage teenagers, and sometimes like kids on that platform, either naked or getting abused type stuff. And so it was serious stuff. And there was an interview with Raymond that actually happened with James in person, and then they didn't release it because of politics.
The powers that be.
Politics with Twitter.
All the people who are using that.
Yeah. So those things on top of the whole Bohemian Grove visitation of James by saying that he went to Bohemian Grove for like business funding purposes.
And what is Bohemian Grove? I don't know what that is.
Bohemian Grove is rumored, conspirized to be like where.
Oh, this is the place in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Or up there? Right. I remember this part.
Yeah, Monte Rio, California, and San Francisco. There's two different locations, but it's basically where the world elites are supposed to gather. Yeah, it's the Big Owl.
Yeah.
The story is said that it's where like the worship of Baal and Moloch happen, which are two like demonic entities essentially that they have child sacrifice there that apparently used to happen in like the early 1900s by the cremation of care, which is a ritual where, if you think about the etymology of those words, cremation, getting rid of, right, disposal of, putting into ash, of care, right, caring for someone, something, the world, right. These people are all influential world leaders, and so they're killing care, they're getting rid of care. So they do that at the beginning so that they can then have 2 weeks together about how they're gonna basically run the world and manipulate mankind through not even having to shoot bullets, right? It's all this mind games,
right?
Through the TV, through political narratives, through whatever else, and I mean sometimes sometimes there are real attacks for sure. Genocide, it happens, but a lot of it is done through the psychological warfare, and I believe a lot of it starts through the Bohemian Grove because there's FBI, CIA, financial CEOs, and you know you must wonder why James O'Keefe, the king of investigative journalism and undercover sting operations with undercover cameras, gets invited to go there, right? But he admits that he will not be with his phones, he will not be with his technology, so he went under being a guest and basically to make friends. And it's at least rumored that it wasn't even his first time going. I just got the admission of it, and he has since not spoken about it publicly. He has not denied it though, either. Like if you all go through my social media, you can there's a video where James and I actually were speaking on a Twitter Spaces, X Spaces, where I had requested to join, and I was literally, this was in Chiro school. I was, working out at the gym at Life University, and I requested to join as I was listening to the space. And I was like towards the end of my workout, and then next thing I know, I was being called up to speak. He's like, "Oh, we got Justin Leslie here." And so we had a conversation / I basically, confronted him again publicly and said my piece. And yeah, he didn't deny going to Bohemian Grove. And so, there's the admission initially in the documentary, and then there's the post documentary reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't reacted well and answered
right.
the public's questions when questioned, but not enough people have figured it out or figured out who I am and connected all the dots because there's so many moving parts to my story.
For sure. So I have a couple of things I wanted to ask you. One, during this whole few years of being going undercover, was your family, did they know, or is this just like a secret to you?
They didn't know what I was doing at Pfizer, really. Or my mom knew some stuff, I think, but not everything. Yeah, I don't think anyone really knew anything until everything really was put together. My mom knew about the undercover work at Veritas, and my brother and dad, and they all knew that I was a journalist and that I was an investigative reporter. I pierced my ears.
Yeah.
Like I played a role. I was like, I have to come across as gay somehow, so I pierced my ears. So they saw my ears were pierced, so they knew something was happening. Right?
Yeah.
And they I had to be secretive kind of about everything that I was doing. I was going into New York City often for these meetings, whether it was for my meetings or for my colleagues' meetings.
Yeah.
This thing called B-roll, where you just go have dinner basically.
And you just set the
point the camera so you get in the mouth.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd spend 3-4 hours doing that, and you get paid to do that. And part of it's security too, to make sure.
Where does the money come from?
Donors. From Veritas, yeah.
Yeah. So then I want to talk about this book market, but there's people running this Bohemian Grove. I wanted to ask, if there's an equal and opposite force that's doing good, but before that,
it's possible, but I don't know.
You don't know? I mean, it's got to be. There's got to be an equal and opposite
at the Grove or
force. No, I'm just saying in the world.
Yeah. Well, so I've gone through a born again process and given my life to Christ, and that's where I've truly seen fruit and see myself uplifted completely. Mm-hmm. Where I don't take any ownership for anything that I've done. It's all for God, and so taking any ownership for it, I think has, a lot of vanity in it, and, trying to figure all these things out my way. I just have to listen to him. And so I think, you know, everybody's different, but there's a lot of power in giving your life over to Christ. And so, you know, I was always like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And ever since I got baptized by the Holy Spirit and water baptism, I feel like I've just completely changed. And so that was like the final steps of my spiritual journey, because I was always saying I was a follower of Christ, but I don't feel like I was actually a follower of Christ or a disciple.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective, but there's incredible people out here in the world that are freedom fighters, want humanity to be sovereign, and want us to flee from the system that doesn't serve us,
right,
and do good in the world. There are a lot of good people in the world. There's this craziness where we all get manipulated, and it's really important, I think, to dissolve illusions and wake up to what I've said is the mind control apparatus of what the system is, and see where they want to take us so that we don't go towards those lily pads. So they've already laid them out. They want this AI surveillance system. They want us to use our phones for digital IDs and for, having vaccine passports and having, everything digitalized so that they can create a digital prison inevitably. And, we can go down the rabbit hole of flock cameras and everything else and surveillance, et cetera, but that's really what they want. And they've laid it out in Agenda 2030, and they're moving quickly. I don't know how successful they're going to be. I think a lot of people are way too awake to fall into the trap again. For like what COVID time was with this test run of the vaccines and everything. Like, they're not going to get people to do that again.
No.
But if they do it similarly in a way with
they mess that up.
These products, Elon Musk wants to do like Neuralink and stuff, which to me is all part of Revelation and Bible. Like, that really is the mark of the beast system, and the vaccine was preemptive. In the northern states, you had to take that shot in order to go in certain restaurants. You couldn't buy food. You couldn't sit down at a table. You couldn't enter premises. But how do we even know that they're gonna, not do the same thing with the current system, like where you need cryptocurrency or you need a certain social credit score, basically.
Right. They're using a social credit score, I think, in China and some places.
Into a Walmart or something.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to continue to support our local farmers and markets.
Yeah. And
create trade in a way that isn't using their digital dollars and cents, because it's just a big FU to them.
Yeah. So how would you create a life that, if you could create a system for yourself to run through the world, like what would be your view of a way to go?
It's a great question. I don't necessarily have an answer other than we need a system that is backed on love, that is backed on trust and integrity, and whether we use currency or whether we're just using like a barter system of trading skills, like you and I as chiropractors, we can trade our ability to heal people as chiropractors for food, for a place to stay, make sure we have a roof over our shoulders, we have clean water, right? And we use our skills. My friend Mike Wilkerson called it post-apocalyptic skill of chiropractic, right?
It's true.
If things
you have it,
hit the fan, right? Once you know how to adjust, you can help people no matter what.
Yeah.
And so that's also partially why I came to chiropractic school, is to learn this post-apocalyptic skill. Because after being a whistleblower, it was like, oh, what am I going to be, a talking head for the rest of my life? And recently on my Instagram, I've definitely been a talking head, but I also just like using my voice, and just sharing my opinion and perspective. And a lot of people, I don't necessarily do it even for me. It's more like I just like to share my message with the world, and You know, like there's this gentleman, Rob, who keeps commenting on my Facebook and keeps thanking me for my videos. So
Yeah.
I'm doing it for the Robs of the world. You know,
Yeah.
It's just, it's,
Shout out to you, Rob. You'll
Yeah.
see this. Yeah.
yeah. So it's, you know, and that's the cool thing about the internet. You get to connect with people that you never think you'd ever connect with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating sometimes, you know, like I'll make a video and just at school, because I've been coming out with a few of these podcasts. And people will come up to me, you know, like I'll watch this and typically there's not engagement on the live streams, but, you know, you see, I'll be like 100 people watch this and I'm like, who is it? You know, are they random? But then somebody will come around the corner and be like, the way that you said this or that. I'm like, really? You were the one? Like, that's awesome. You know, like,
That is awesome.
it's cool. It feels
I
awesome.
do wonder who's watching.
Yeah, well, they're committed. We got 2 hardcore fans right now.
Love you guys.
Yeah, I love you guys. Yeah, dude, for
That's
sure.
hilarious.
Okay, so then that was the transition. You decided that chiropractic was a way that you could help people. It didn't cross any of your boundaries, sustainable for a whole life. I mean, plus you said you learned about chiropractic because of Mom's accident.
So my mom's accident is what had me learn about chiropractic, right? She got T-boned, and then I went to an Atlas orthogonal doc to have my spine looked at, and it turned out the top bone in my neck, you know, C1 and 2 were even more off-center than hers, 5 and 10 degrees, which is actually a lot, right? It's a lot in chiropractic.
Yeah,
Even shifting of 1 degree is a lot. And so after one adjustment, I went to 2.5 and 5 degrees.
Sick.
So that was awesome. And I actually saw healing happen in my body. Like I was going through, you know, basically a herniated disc bulge, and
Where?
you know, in I believe L5, right L5S1 is where it happened.
Football.
From no, not football.
No?
Deadlifting, ego lifting.
There you go.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was like on all fours, and so I mean it's very cool because I go to an upper cervical doc to deal with that, and
Yeah.
they still, you know, he'll adjust full spine, but he always wants to make sure your head's on straight. Is basically what he says.
For sure.
And so him and Dr. Loy was the other doctor working in Dr. Corcell's office. They basically were swinging my legs, and they were just like kind of helping to try and facilitate the bulge back into place. And you know, after a few treatments, I was already back. I was like, let's go. And so I still have to be a little cautious with the bulge / herniation. Like I don't deadlift or squat nearly as much as I used to, which I think is a good thing in the grand scheme of things.
2 more reps, though.
Yeah. It's more or less the weight that does it for me. Like once I go past like 275 on either of those, it's just that's when I start really feeling it for a few days in my back. And so you know, but we'll see. I'm getting under corrective chiropractic care this quarter.
Oh yeah.
For max living. I'm doing max living this quarter, so we'll see. Yeah, I've been doing screenings for them and everything, getting patients for them. So it's been
full spine X-rays.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing that. Cool. So I'm excited to see where all of that goes.
Yeah, dude.
Honestly, and
I'd be curious to see too.
like who knows? See where the potential symptoms that I have, like if they're able to clear up at all.
Yeah.
From that, and in general, just start feeling better. You know, because I still have some lower back pain, like from the bulge and everything, and you know, just modern day society and posture is just.
You ever sit on a wobble chair?
Yeah.
Tenabon wobble chairs?
Yeah.
Hey man, those rehydrate discs. I know you don't have to, yours is herniated, but I mean, hey, decompression will help suck it in. Have you ever done a decompression machine?
I have a decompression table.
Nice.
Where you're hanging upside down.
Oh. Well, this one pulls weight.
I actually haven't. I have a friend who has. I'd like to try it though.
It feels good, dude. It makes like push you to sleep. I mean, you put 80 pounds, pull you. You're a big dude, so you probably handle. You know, you probably start with like 60 or 70, and a few times have to get up to like 80, 90. Feels good, bro. You just like, I don't know. It's like dangling from your head. You know, if somebody just kind of like relieves all the gravity for you, you're just like, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it feels awesome. But a lot of the times the decompression, I mean, I've seen it in the chiropractic reps that I worked at. I mean, you got a herniated disc, they do the decompression, the disc herniation. Not every time. Don't quote me. Not every time. You can quote that. But sometimes the herniations go back.
Nice. That's awesome. And they say it's incurable at school.
It's true. Hey, you know what? So this is a funny thing. It's totally unrelated, but I just like talking about the research. I was talking with somebody about research, and they're like, "Oh, chiropractic will never have double-blind, randomized controlled trials." Which for some of you means that the doctor doesn't know that they're giving an adjustment, and the patient doesn't know that they're receiving an adjustment, which is not possible. It's just not possible. And the whole conversation was like, this is why nobody takes chiropractic seriously, because there's no double-blind randomized control trials. And I was thinking about this because I was mad at myself in the moment, because I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, I don't know why I can't think of something good to say right now. But the reality is that neither does brain surgery. Neither does back surgery. You can't tell a doctor, go ahead and cut that person's back open. You're working on their brain. Like nobody in their right mind would do that. So really, like, does it? I'm just saying,
It's all
if you know who you are, the double-blind, randomized controlled trial doesn't matter in the medical industry too. So
it's only for drugs.
It's only for drugs. Yeah. Which ironically, another of my favorite realizations in life was like the idea of the placebo effect. We go, okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, we talk about it so much. The placebo, the medical industry goes, the placebo is like the gold standard. If it doesn't beat the placebo, then it's not effective, which is fascinating because a lot of them don't. And the placebo effect is just a fancy way for saying that if you believe that you're going to be better and you end up getting better, then we have to test this drug versus your own belief that you're getting better.
Yeah.
Like,
and then their belief ends up doing better.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, exactly.
when it's astronomically better than the drug, they end up just throwing the study out because they don't want to.
They don't want to show exactly. So then it's like, all right, well, you got 19 side effects, or just believe that your headache's going to go away, and you, ironically, if just believing that your headache will go away will cure your headache. It's fascinating, really, to me.
Power of the mind.
Yeah.
Power of the subconscious mind, conscious mind. It's all ties into symptoms and everything.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful topic.
Yeah.
I think I talked about it in one of my videos too.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
The placebo. I mean, it's kind of like a slap in the face when you understand what it is. You're like, you're going to test your drugs versus my brain, and I don't even have to know that I'm using my brain. You're just telling me that I took the drug. That is fascinating.
Well, yeah,
They give you a sugar tablet.
They think they're taking the drug that is working for them, and then it ends up doing better. And then if they take the drug, then they end up,
their headaches don't go away.
Or they die.
Yeah.
Or they grow, a third leg.
Randomized control dial.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's funny, man. Well, dude. We hit on some good points, bro.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. The two of you who are still there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see this produced.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
This is really only my second in-person interview, so it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, dude. We'll have to do it again sometime, bro. There's plenty of topics that we can get into.
I'd love to come on and talk about how my corrective care is going once I'm going through all that.
Absolutely.
See where it is, and just we can. I'm reading The Great Divide right now for the green books, so I got to get into more green books, but gotta finish the first one. But we can rip philosophy all day. Dude,
that's what we need to do. There's a lot of chiropractors out there that I think what my goal is, and I'd love your help to do it. But the goal for me is to have these polarizing conversations, because the point of the chiropractic message is the name of this podcast is to unify our profession and just go, hey, look, guys, there's some things that we can get congruent on and we can standardize, in my opinion, and the world would benefit if we can just get on like a similar page as a profession, instead of beating down the others in our profession. I'm trying not to give too much away. I have a debate tomorrow. So if one of the two people, they're doing like research on me right now, I can't give too much away about the debate. The debate is, does universal intelligence exist or not?
For your philosophy
for the philosophy debate.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we took the side of the opposite of my belief, which is that it does not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I actually am fairly confident that the way that we are going to show up will convert more people. Yeah.
So ours flipped on our vote, where we had more people saying yes, and then it flipped
to no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to
I
happen
didn't
tomorrow.
do that topic, but
yeah,
it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating to think of the opposite, guys. Hey, just if you have a belief system, like the point of this class is to try to prove the opposite to be true. It's fascinating. It's opened my eyes a lot, and I still believe in universal intelligence. But tomorrow, I'm freaking coming with something that nobody's seeing. Me and Vance. So watch out, guys.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All Vance.
Yeah, he's good, dude.
Sweet.
All right, bro. Well, we'll say hello to, or say goodbye to all the peeps. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
And this will be